Hey guys, this is Robert Hamm for RobertHammPhotography.com. Catch me over at Twitter at RobHammPhoto. And today we're going to be talking about ways to help you be more successful. So I've gotten a few questions through YouTube, through emails and everything. What gear do you use? What do you do? How do you generate clients and stuff like that? I even have some where people say that they're trying to start a photography business. They want to know if they should think of it as a hobby, or when does it change over from a hobby to a second type of or a full-time job, or a W-2 position to a 1099 type position. What do you do to be successful? And can photography, can it sustain you in life? And the answer is yes, but it's hard work. It's a lot more than what you might think, and it's definitely a lot more than what your clients will think you do if you're doing what you actually do very well. Something that I hear a lot, especially when I go and I shoot weddings, and those of you that have shot a few weddings, it's a kind of crazy event. I make the majority of my revenue comes from shooting weddings, and while I'm shooting a wedding, I hear people say, "Wow, you're such a great photographer." Get the pat on the back, and they'll look at my equipment and gear. We'll talk about that in a minute, and they'll say, "Oh, this is great. You're just doing such a wonderful job. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And the question I usually have for them, and I say it in a joking manner, is, "That's great, but you haven't seen the pictures yet." So what is it about what I do that makes them think I'm doing a good job? Is photography all about the photo? Is it all about the moment? Who or what is it really about? So today I'm going to talk about some of those things and kind of answer them for you. So the first part is, I got to put my glasses on. You may not have noticed, but I didn't have them on. So let's talk about that for a second. Your setting, your customer, and your client. How you dress and how you look is extremely important into how they view what you're doing. If I'm not saying that you need to show up to a meeting where you're going to wear a suit and tie, but if someone's trying to hand you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a contract, the likelihood is you should be dressed appropriate for that. Currently, that means that if I'm meeting a younger couple or client, in their 30s or 20s or 30s or 40s or somewhere in there, and they're the ones that are paying for it, I'm going to dress a little bit more modern and hip. I like jeans, a collared shirt, and a pullover and stuff like that. But I may change it up. I might wear just a suit jacket with, a corduroy jacket with, blazer or something, and a pair of jeans. But if I'm going to go and meet a couple that definitely comes from a more defined family, maybe a more well-established family, or an older couple. When I say older, I don't mean old. I just mean older than me. Then I'm going to dress more conservatively, which might mean definitely a suit jacket, a black jacket, a pair of black jeans, not black jeans, but black pants, an actual suit. I may or may not wear a tie. That also means this, that where I meet and how I meet and what I'm doing is going to change as well. I have several pairs of glasses. I know this might sound silly, but there's a completely different look. I can see you guys now. That's great, right? There's a completely different look from here. And I love Oakleys, even in my regular sunglass wear, to another pair, such as these right here. So this is a much more conservative kind of look, compared to a much more modern or kind of hipster-ish look. And I like turtle shell, and so I'm going to keep these on because I like them. So the point that I'm trying to make here for you is recognizing how to look to the person that you're talking to. And the reason that's important is because we're talking about salesmanship, and the biggest question is, how do I know when I'm ready to turn photography from a hobby to a business, a W-2, or a 1099 that can make me some money? It's when you're confident in your photography and you can start sitting down and booking clients and speaking about your business in a way that's intelligent. That means something else. It also means your gear, honestly, in many ways. I'm going to get a lot of flame for this for those that look, but your gear is less important. In fact, I think that it really doesn't matter. I think that the gear that you're using, as long as you understand your gear and you're using it properly, is the more important thing. So my advice is not to worry about a $10,000 camera, not even to worry about a $5,000 kit, but to worry about a camera and a kit that's going to accomplish what you want. So if you're trying to do daylight weddings on the beach, then you might be able to do it with your 7100. Actually, you definitely will be able to do it with your D7100 pretty easily. If you're moving on back, like to an A58, an Alpha 58, a Sony, yeah, that should be okay too, but you're going to need to really invest in some quick primes You know, for a long time when I got started, I shot on an A57, which is not the A58, the Alpha 57, which had a better sensor in my opinion, even though lower resolution than the A58, but better low light performance. I shot with an A57 and a 1.8 50 millimeter. You know, it's just a Sony the DT lens, and it turned out wonderfully for me. From there, of course, I invested in more gear as I grew that business. But my point is, before I even ever thought about shooting a wedding, I knew how to shoot and use my camera in the environment for which I was going to be using it. So outside, inside, daylight, low light, I made sure that I was very good and skilled at that first. And I did that because I just love taking pictures. So I took lots and lots of photos until I figured out, you know, I knew my gear inside and out. I also don't shoot on big old cameras, although this is a big old camera. Imagine this is the XT1. This is a full frame flash. What I mean full frame, what I mean is it's the same size as the Canon 600 series. This is the Wine 560 Series 4, pretty much a clone with some interesting capabilities. But look how big it is just compared to the camera. This is a battery grip. I'm using the Fuji XT1. This right now is the kit lens. This isn't the important part about what I'm getting ready to tell you. Remember I said it's dressed for success, right? The second part of that is, I may come up backwards, is my logo. Or this Robert Hamm Photography. It's on everything that I do. Everywhere I go when I go shooting, it's out there. I like this piece of kit, but even this one's, you know, with everything, maybe $2 grand. Well, no, $1,800 with tax, $1,900 with this, you know? Yeah, so maybe $2 grand. The point is, and I've got more lenses for it and everything. So my point is that you just have to be comfortable with what you're shooting. So there definitely is a way, you know, for $2,000 with someone that understands what they're doing and is confident in their photography and able to sit down and book a client, you definitely could book a wedding with gear like this. I shoot weddings with the XT1, the OMD EM5 and EM10. I absolutely love them. I switched over from my A77 to the EM5. Now the EM5 Mark II's out. I absolutely love that camera. So your shooting style and philosophy has to work with whom you're shooting and working with. I carry 2 cameras. I usually have a backup camera on a tripod somewhere with a wide-angle lens, and I start click, 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 click. So those are competencies that people are going to want to hear about that you do well when you start booking them. So being able to speak about them and understand why you're shooting with gear and not have it be a money issue, right, is important because it allows you to speak quickly and intelligently about what you're doing. I forget what philosopher said it. I think it was Aristotle, but he said if you can't explain it, you don't understand it. Take that. If you can't explain how to shoot a wedding, if you can't tell someone who could be your assistant, even if they're your next door neighbor's niece or uncle or aunt, if you can't explain what you do to them in a simple term so that they can understand it, then you're probably not ready to do it. But if you can, then you're ready to move on. However, this is more about what makes people successful. So we've talked about 2 things. Number 1 is knowing who you're going to talk to. Number 2 is how you're going to present it, and that includes yourself. So your audience, who you're going to talk to, and how you're going to present yourself to your audience, how you're going to show yourself. Here are 2 things on my father's bookshelf that have been very, very, very important to me on running a photography business and trying to make it successful. So for those of you that have asked, this one was from my grandmother, and it's an old book. Look at that. It's Amy Vanderbilt's new complete book of etiquette. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and learn how to set up a dinner party, but wait a minute. You want to shoot a wedding and make some money? Maybe you should have a reference to what a traditional wedding actually is. Now we're getting somewhere. So that when you sit down and you're talking to your client, and I don't even call them clients, I said clients to you and I, but when you're talking with your guests, maybe it's important for you to know the different ways to properly fold a men's pocket square. It's not a handkerchief unless you're blowing your nose with it, guys. It's a pocket square. That's an important distinction because men don't ask other men to borrow their to borrow their handkerchief because that's dirty. But a man may offer another man his pocket square in order to help him clean a spill that has happened or get something off of his glasses. These are very subtle differences that your clients, specifically the ones that want to pay you $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, I don't make that much, but I'm sure they're going to appreciate that. So, you know, if someone's giving you a couple grand to go to a wedding, they're definitely going to recognize if you know the difference between evening wear, a table service or an afternoon table service? Or like, did you know that your napkin folds differently when you sit down at different situations? Absolutely. Specifically on the time of the day. And what colors do men usually wear for an afternoon wedding? Well, if you're getting married in the afternoon or the morning, it should be a light color for a man. And if it's in the evening, it should be a dark color. Black tie, black coat, white tie. All of that stuff's in here. And although it may not come up every time, the one time that it does come up, it's the time that will differentiate you in the guest's mind that is paying from the other guy that they just sat down with, which is very important. The other thing is that there's a lot of tradition in this, and this works for traditional brides. But if you're talking modern brides, throw it out the window. Talking about modern grooms, throw it out the door. If we're talking about a modern wedding, what does that mean? It actually has a meaning. It's unique, simple, chic, and brief. There's not a lot of tradition in modern weddings. There can be weddings that have a lot of tradition in them, that have a very modern feel to them. But you have to understand, this is probably a little bit more modern. The other one's probably a little more conservative. Contacts probably be better if I'm going to be shooting outside all day long. I got to put a camera up to my eyes. These are things to think about. And a lot of that can be found here, specifically for your contemporary type of traditional weddings. Another thing is, the successful practice. This one, you know what? My dad's got hand-scribed notes in this. He's no longer with me, but this book, I mean, leather bound. Leather keeps well, by the way. The more you use it, the less it is. The point is how to keep pace with change, how to follow perpetual growth. Ideas, big ideas for small rooms. These concepts are things that really transcend time. They don't just kind of stop here. So the question is, where do you find creativity in a day where everybody's doing something creative? How do you stand out and be unique when everybody's doing something and being bold? You do it by just doing what you do well, right? So I started out as an ambient light photographer. And it was easy because I didn't understand flash. And so I booked weddings that I could do that didn't require flash. You understand? I didn't book weddings that required flash years ago. But I recognized that I need to do and understand that strobe, how that flash works. And now my weddings have 3, 4, 5 strobes set up in different areas, sometimes multi-setups in different groups. And, I can light all kinds of things with these wireless flashes I use. And I've become a master in the trade. But I recognized what I didn't know and then what I needed to know to get into it. So I only advertised myself for the things that I knew that I could do well. And when I started doing that, I was able to gain some success there, and then people enjoyed it because I wasn't stretching my own envelope further than what I was able to do. So I was able to deliver consistency. So in these books, things like this comes down to the third part, organization. So we talked about knowing your audience, who are you going to talk to, knowing you, how you're going to present it, how you're going to talk to who you're going to talk to, and we've talked about organization, how you make what you want to make happen. So those are the 3 biggest things that are going to be there to help you along the way. I spend about 10% of my time shooting. And what does that tell you? Listen, there's about 70 hours a week that I put into trying to find new guests. Okay, I advertise on sites like Thumbtack, Facebook, Google. Sometimes I'll do something in Groupon if I'm looking for some kind of portrait work, right? But my other main focus is like constant contact and getting emails out to my past clients and staying upbeat and in their mind. Listen, the other thing that you have to realize is if you're a wedding photographer and the only thing you're doing is shooting your guest's wedding, you have failed. You've failed. I'm glad that you've done a good job shooting their wedding, I assume. But you failed in the fact that you're a historian. When I talk and sit down and meet with my customers, I don't tell them I'm just some photographer. And if you say, oh, I'm there to capture a great moment, duh. That's what every photographer does. That's what anybody with a camera, that's what Uncle Bob is going to do when he shows up standing over your shoulder with a 610 or a 810 or something else. You get what I'm saying? So that's the wrong answer. That's not a good enough answer. That means if your answer to the question is, what do you do as a photographer? Well, I capture the moments. If that's the answer to the question, you need to go back to the drawing board because, my 5-year-old son can capture moments. He can draw circles and tell me stories about them. That's capturing a moment. What can you do that's different? Well, if you're there, and this leads into what I was saying about photography, if you're just shooting their wedding, You failed because you are a historian. At least I'm a historian. I chronicle someone's life, beginning with another person. That's what I do. And if I do my job well and I'm proficient and competent in my art, then that means that they will stay with me as guests until we outgrow one another. Okay? There's many ways you can outgrow somebody. You know, my pricing may go up and they may not be able to afford it. You know, they may grow up and have a falling out or find another photographer. But if you do what you do well, you will turn them on to what it is to be photographed and what it is to have an image captured that is timeless, you know, what it is to have a day chronicled in such a way that it truly tells a story. It doesn't matter if it's editorial, journalistic, traditional, or whatever. It will be done so in such a way that they can have respect for what it is that you're doing and what it is that they need done. So my last piece of advice is to be you, right? Whatever it is that you do is to be you. For me, it's the historian, to write a chronology of what they're doing. That's what I intend to do. I love taking pictures of people. I love taking pictures of kids playing. It's just awesome. I like to capture that little moment, but it's not a moment that I'm capturing. I'm chronicling a part of their day. And in succession, alone and with others, it tells the story of how they became who they are. Also, in order to capture that story, whenever I shoot a wedding, I also do a photo walk with my bride and groom through a romantic part of town that I take over a little ferry boat, right, from one side of town to the other, from Norfolk to Portsmouth and back, and I'm able to get them in some kind of very romantic situation that I can begin to understand who they are by how they walk, interact, and talk. Then I begin capturing that. And once that's put together, when I deliver that album to them, that's the history of them right there. That's like their beginning. So the first time that I get to shoot them isn't actually at their wedding. That's great. The first time that I get to get in front of them is for their engagement session. So already, we've proven a point of fact. If you're just shooting your guest's wedding, you have failed because you haven't started at the beginning, and the beginning is a long way before the wedding. So now that you know that, you might have a little bit of extra perspective in order to get there. Getting there requires some things. Knowing your customer, knowing your client, understanding who they are and what they want, being able to properly explain it and be that person for them, and then being organized enough to make it happen so that you don't capture the moments, but you actually create a chronology, you create a history. So those are my 4 tips right there for helping you start your own photography business. Those are my 4 tips right there for helping you realize when you're ready. You're ready when you can explain to someone what you do in a way that makes sense to someone that has no idea what you do. You're ready when what you do looks so effortless that people think that there's no effort in it when we know that there is. You're ready when you are confident to take that first shot. Hey, that's just what I think. That's what I've done. I could be wrong. Tell me what you think. Leave some questions or some answers in the comments below. I definitely would like to know what you're shooting with. And if you have any requests for future videos, let me know. And as always, keep watching. And by the way, I'm going to have my April, I think it's April, January, February, March. Oh, excuse me, we're going into April. I'm going to have my March What's in My Wedding Gear bag coming out just the next day or so. And I got a real surprise coming for you about the 3rd week of April as well. So stay tuned. Hey, look, my name is Robert Hamm. I'm over at roberthamphotography.com. Catch me at Twitter at robhamphoto. And I hope to see you on the other side. Keep shooting, my friends. I didn't turn it off yet. It doesn't take a lot. You want to see what I shoot with? It's right here. Yeah, you guys get the big show. I'm filming this on the iPhone 6 Plus, right? This is where I am, okay? And I got a cool little rig. I'll take it out right here. You want to see? Yeah, here's the behind the scenes. You like that, don't you? I knew you would. There it is. You can see it right there. That's the Readycam grip. This is just nothing more than an L bracket. I got a Neewer CN160 LED light right there. Over here I have a couple of Lima Studio. You guys know those aren't very expensive, but they're just Lima Studio light stands with 250 watt bulbs or whatever in both of those. And then I got a couple of just little cans up there. Looks like one moved a little bit, and a backdrop. And of course some guitars and my messy desk because I've been doing all kinds of stuff. So, there you go. What am I going to do with all this stuff? You tell me.